Hello and welcome to From the Be All End, the Burnley podcast. I'm Andrew Greaves. We've got a usual array of pod squadders: Justin Connolly, Chris Boden, Paul Woodhouse, and a special guest this week. We have got Darren Bentley, former media manager of Burnley Football Club. They're under Sean Dyche. There we go. Anyone who's got Sean Dyche on the From the Be All End bingo. Not Chris Boden mentioning Sean this week, but myself. Daz, thank you very much for joining us. How are we, mate?
Very good, very good. Nice to meet you, Jen. Nice to speak to you again.
Excellent, good stuff. Well, I think me and Chris have known Daz for quite a while, and I actually did my work experience with Daz at the Accrington Observer as a 15-year-old, which I think tells you how old Daz is, because I've been around for fucking years. But we'll perhaps go on to Daz's experience. Before joining Burnley Football Club, did report on Burnley Football Club for the Lancashire Telegraph as well. So plenty of experience in the camp. The John Joe Shelby of the pod squad, bringing him in for his experience.
It's good that the hair's getting a bit like John Joe the back. Well,
a couple of us are already there, but in fact, just you and Chris really keeping up the Head and Shoulders adverts and things. But let's start with Tuesday night. Justin, a bit better, a bit more intent. Quite a good performance. First 45, pretty decent. What was your view on Burnley 1, Oxford United 0?
Do you know what? I don't know whether it's because we've been starved of entertainment, but I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a good game. I think the scoreline doesn't reflect what happened in the game. In fact, I thought we could have been miles away by half time if we'd got our shooting boots on. Created lots of chances, which we haven't done for a long time. There just seemed to be a bit more energy about it, didn't there? A bit more kind of aggression. I think that's probably more down to the fact that Hannibal was playing in that number 10 role again. I mean, when he's played there before, I've thought he's not got a lot of creativity about him. He doesn't have that pass that can break open a defence, does he? But he brings some kind of energy to it that makes things happen. It's all a bit quicker, and I think that's what we've lacked. Moving the ball quickly. I think that's why we haven't opened teams up as much as we might have done. So yeah, I thought it was okay. I mean, we have seen false dawns before, haven't we, this season? So I'm not saying everything's changed, but it was a step in the right direction, and 3 points keeps us up there, doesn't it? Keeps us in touch.
Yeah, and Woody, I mean, I think we talked on the podcast that we recorded together because everybody else was out of action about kind of corners turned and was wanting to carry on straight rather than coming back on ourselves and just going round in circles. And it did feel a bit like, another one of these new dawns, didn't it? And Justin's right. I think Hannibal, who I've described previously as a bit of a busy idiot, he does bring something, even if you can't quite put your finger on what he brings.
Well, I think if you look at some of his stats from Tuesday night, I think, was it 46 or 47 passes completed? And it looked like a man possessed on Tuesday night. It looked like he was trying to make a point, and he was, all over the place in that midfield. And like you say, it's a different energy, isn't it? It's a different vibrancy. And we should have been out of sight. We should have Plymouth them, to be fair. It should have been all over after 20 minutes. And had it been all over by 20 minutes, in the second half, everybody would have been all laying, and it would have been a very good day at the office. As it was, there was quite a bit of grumbling, the way that the second half panned out. But it's a different type of control, isn't it, that we have with this particular side under Parker. If we've gone 1-0 up, then, we'll kill that game off. And I'm almost as sure of us with a lead not conceding as you may have been under VK getting that last-minute winner. It's just that kind of thing is infinitely more entertaining than killing the games off as Parker likes to do. But I think some of the passages of play were a lot more impressive. I think there were lots of a few nice little touches, like that miss in the first half where Fleming's given that little back heel to Foster. Now the devil has missed that. I've absolutely no idea. But, there were some little bits like that were nice and nice to see. And it did look like a corner had been turned, to be fair.
Yeah, and Chris, I mean, your mantra has been for, much of the last, this run of games, you score and you win, because we never look like conceding, do we? And I know kind of, James Trafford probably could have got his deck chair out and cigar and a margarita and still not been troubled.
A pizza and a drink.
A bit of both, probably.
To quote Liam Gallagher,
yeah. But it was, you know what I mean? It kind of, you know, it is true into the minute. What are we? I can't even remember how many games. Is it 9 clean sheets on the spin?
Yeah.
I mean, it looks like if you score, we're going to end up winning. It might not be, you know, it might literally be 1-0 to the Burnley, but we want to see a bit more aggression, don't we? And we got that on Tuesday night.
Yeah, on the other side in my lifetime, I can, you know, recall being as similar as Mourinho's first Chelsea side, and you knew as soon as they opened the scoring, it was done and dusted. And we're not as dynamic. We don't have a Duff or a Robin or someone like that. And but I say Tuesday there was a bit more vibrancy. We're playing through. You're getting Josh Cullen sort of, you know, that sort of third man run, getting in behind and causing problems. Obviously led to the goal. They had a similar situation second half. But I say Hannibal's he's a strange one, isn't he? He just he set the tempo and the sort of, you know, led by example in a sort of Barton sense, really. In a weird way, he reminds me of Eagles. He's not a similar footballer as Chris Eagles, but his intent is that, you know, he wants to drive you forward and try and make things happen. You know, Chris Eagles had a bit more flair and a bit more attacking ability, but I'd say that passing ratio was ridiculous. Yeah. And to be fair to him, his temperament stood up as well. I mean, if someone had smashed the football at me from 5 yards away, I think I'd have been seeing red, to be honest. And, you know, they all had a goal at some stage, and he managed to. I mean, he got booked for winning a tackle, legitimately, and ridiculous. And he ends up, as a result, being taken off, which is a bit unfair on the lad. But yeah, he gave us something else the other night. But we're eagerly anticipating the ones who aren't playing just yet. We all want to see Edwards in action, and I think we all want to see Benson sort of creep back into some sort of shape, whether he's just going to be as an impact sub. But promising. I mean, Foster was, as bad as his misses were in the first sort of 15 minutes, he gave us a more positive performance, and he was like looking like he was going to, you know, create. He showed a bit of invention, and I mean, they were as good as their unbeaten run was before the game. They were bloody rotten, weren't they?
Yeah.
But you can only beat what's in front of you again, like Plymouth the other week.
Yeah, and Daz, I mean, the amazing stat, of course, is 5 defeats in 100 championship games, which is just ridiculous. You know, I know it's over several seasons and things like that with big gaps in the Premier League, but they're just at this level. There's very few teams in the history of the rebranded Championship as good as Burnley in terms of, you know, getting results, is there?
I think if you went back to that time, was it Hull City we lost to under Sean before the 23 unbeaten? If you look back then and thought where we would be now in terms of the number of games we've lost since, it's ridiculous, quite frankly. I do think, and I touched on what Chris said at the end there, I do think this is a goddamn awful championship.
Yeah.
The top four are so much better than everybody else. And that's probably why it's a little bit more frustrating than, and there's a lot of grumbles around the ground because the level of opposition we're coming up against, I think, is so much lower than we've had in previous championships. And I think that's where the grumbles come from. I sit in the Jimmy Mack lower, and there's a lot of grumbles in there, and I have to tell you, I'm part of it at the moment. I've been grumbling quite a bit. Partly because, you know, at the other end of the pitch, I mean, on Tuesday, for instance, all the chances were at the far end.
Yeah.
And you can't quite get a gauge from low down in the Jimmy Mack how good the chances were until you watch them back. So, I don't know. I just think we're going to finish in the top four, aren't we? I think it might be a bit of musical chairs at the end of the season where we finish. But those top four are so far ahead of everybody else. And as you've all said, we do know that once we score a goal, we're in the driving seat in most games, if not all games.
Yeah. Justin, I mean, I think me and Woody touched upon it, but that kind of top six is pretty much guaranteed, isn't it? I mean, the gap between where we are and seventh is going to be really difficult to bridge. Do you think we need to see a bit more risk-taking? I mean, we've talked a bit on this podcast about is the clean sheet record and the inability to kind of concede goals, is it working against us, which feels really strange? But do you now want to see a bit of a risk? I mean, the signing of Edwards and the lad from Ajax feels a bit like, oh, you know what, this is probably a little bit more direct and dynamic than anything we've got, in terms of who's fit, Koleosho, notwithstanding Benson, etc. Would you like to see a few more risks taken now? And actually, you know what, there's nothing wrong with conceding the odd goal, and, because it kind of levels you a little bit.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think that's what's needed. And I think the record, defensive record shows that we can actually afford to be a bit more positive. And I get what you mean by the fact that, when you say, is it holding us back a little bit? You do wonder whether sort of that defensive unit is so desperate not to concede a goal now and keep this run going as long as we possibly can, that it is making us a little bit more cautious. Every time they came anywhere near our goal, I was sort of heart in mouth thinking, oh no, we can't concede a goal now. It'd be awful, wouldn't it? But then you sort of wonder, if we did concede one, whether that might just free us up from thinking about that record and thinking about how fantastic the defence is and allow us that little bit more freedom to go for it. Because, I mean, you have to imagine, don't you, that they don't want to be so goal shy, do they? They want to score more goals. They want to get forward more. They want to, kill games off in a way that we haven't been able to. I just wondered, like you say, in the back of the mind, whether that sort of run of clean sheets is just playing on the minds a little bit and just dampening down that sort of, more aggressive, more forward thinking. So yeah, maybe it's time to let one in.
Woody, I mean, we're getting dangerously close to that 23 undefeated, as the chant goes, during the kind of company season. It is not losing holding us back, because you look at kind of, you look at how many games some of the other teams in that top four have lost, and, it's not a huge amount, but it kind of provokes a reaction, doesn't it? Leeds have a bit of a bad result and then go on and kind of start, playing a more kind of expansive style of football. Sheffield United have had the odd blip, but then bounce straight back from it. Have we almost become a bit immune to what it feels like to taste defeat, and actually we become a bit metronomic in terms of the whole team rather than just Cullen? We want to be that metronome.
I think it's more a case of needing that spark, isn't it? It's kind of having somebody like under the VK season, we had all these little moments where we had Benson constantly cutting in and nobody could work out how to double man mark him. Scott Twine coming on and scoring that free kick. We're just missing those little bits of vital sparks. And I think with the signing of Edwards, that could be it, arguably, because if he's remotely fit and he's got his head anywhere near the game, he should be far too good for the Championship, and he should be able to turn things round. And so instead of us having these dour 0-0s where we've kept in the games, the games that are poor or whatever, we can fashion something out of nothing, and hopefully Edwards will be able to bring that, and that's how we kick on. Because if we had something like that so far, or another one of these sides in the top four would have had a little bit more of that, they'd be at least 10 points clear by now, Yeah. So, and I think it's there. I think it's there for the taking, really.
Yeah, and Chris, I mean, Edwards was kind of out on the sideline, warming up, almost doing that kind of, hey, gaffer, look at me, I'm stretching, I'm ready to come on. I think he had his shorts on at that point. He'd kind of got rid of the tracky bottoms, and of course he brought Barnes on. It almost felt a little bit kind of, I think everybody where I sit in the North Upper almost wanted a glimpse of Edwards. We saw it with Shelby, didn't we? Let's kind of, move on to the debutant who did come on. There's a pass from Shelby. I mean, it's the only meaningful contribution, but he was only on a couple of minutes, which is a ball on the spin over the top into grass for Anthony to run onto. It's little moments. Woody talks about sparks and things. sometimes it's little bits like that where you get a player who, by all accounts, and people I've spoke to who are down at Gawthorpe quite often say he's absolutely smashing it in training. He's looking as fit as he has done for years. Is kind of someone like Shelby, that little spark that we perhaps need in midfield in the last 20 minutes rather than the last 2 or 3 minutes that actually might start to unlock games?
Yeah, well, exactly. It's you're talking about, to go back to, I'll get there eventually. We're talking about the defensive record, and we're not banked in. We're not defending for our lives, banked in, desperate to preserve a clean sheet. It's just we are so good at preventing sides on the counter, or as the modern parlance, in transition. We don't give up those opportunities, and we take fewer risks in forward areas as a result. And it is putting that football at risk, isn't it? How many times does a winger get down the line and instead of trying to beat someone, they'll not lose possession, come back, give it simple, and we try again, sort of thing. And Shelby is, like I said, with that pass, he put it at risk. He tried something a bit, flamboyant, if you will. Really clever reverse pass with, over some distance. It must have been a 40, 50-yard reverse ball. And it's that sort of thinking outside the box and saying, you know what, we are prepared to lose the ball, but also prepared to gamble doing something brilliant with it at the same time. And you're desperate for that. I mean, Edwards could give us that as well. You can't have it both ways. We've had Sarmiento, and at times he's given the ball away, and you think, oh, Jesus, we're going to get done on the counter here. Because one loose flick or a drag back that doesn't work, and all of a sudden you've got the opposition raining down on you. So you've got to temper that. But I think Edwards has that ability to operate in tight spaces and change direction at pace. I mean, he's not as quick as Koleosho, but he can run with it in a more controlled manner at pace than Koleosho can. And hopefully it gives you that. Another thing, that sort of sliding these through balls through from, the sort of footage I've seen of him. He's got that sort of ability to find a run, slip balls in behind centre-halves where they hate it. And, that'll give you another dimension as well, because other than that opening game, again, where Perez plays Brownhill in and Roberts plays Alderburton over the top, and we haven't really seen that at all.
Yeah. And Daz, you've obviously, worked under a few Burnley managers, all of their kind of own styles and things like that. Just looking at kind of what Chris has mentioned there, that kind of risk and reward, is Parker the most pragmatic, do you think, of those managers that you either worked under or has certainly been the last kind of 4 or 5 managers, perhaps from Coyley onwards?
Yeah. But Parker seems to be a bit risk averse. I know you talked about this before, but it feels like to me Marcus Edwards is an attempt to try and change that a little bit. But I worry a little bit that he'll get indoctrinated into the same old routine, and we'll soon knock all that passion out of him by 5 backwards passes and 3 sideways passes.
Yeah.
We've got to break that mould somehow, and sides sit in. So many sides come and sit in, and we're happy to just switch it from side to side to side to side and keep the possession without that, as Chris said, the sort of overlaps from the fullbacks. I mean, Humphreys gives us a little bit of that, doesn't he, around the life? Roberts rather come inside, wouldn't he, than go on the overlap?
Yeah.
I don't know, we just don't seem to have that balance right. And now whether Edwards can be the sort of catalyst to change that, I'm not sure. I still don't think it helped playing a number 10 as a number 9 and a number 9 as a number 10 and a number 7. And we're just playing people in the wrong places for me. But that's Parker. He's hit a formula that we're not losing games, we're picking up points. He seems to be quite happy with performances. Whether he's behind the scenes or not, we'll never know, but he seems to be quite happy with performances generally. So I don't see anything dramatic changing between now and the summer.
Yeah. And just sticking with you, Daz, obviously, again, Sean, it's fair to say, wasn't much of a fan of cup games, shall we say. I mean, we didn't really ever string together much of a cup run. We obviously were at Southampton on Saturday, tomorrow, as you're listening to this. Scott Parker's obviously going to make lots of changes. Do you think the changes are going to be as a almost forerunner for that them being changes in league games? Because we kind of saw it at Reading, didn't we, with Foster out on the left, and I know there was obviously Hannibal's suspension. Do you see Parker perhaps using the trip to Southampton as a way of being able to kind of, get Edwards into the side, see how he does, perhaps even give Benson a bit of game time, Shelvey in that midfield perhaps, and I'm kind of now thinking Shelvey comes in for Laurent? Or is it a kind of, you know what, we go there, we give somebody, we give lads game time, we're probably going to get beat, it don't really matter, it's a bit of a no loss kind of situation?
I think he's set upon his side now. I think he's found the formula, and I think he'll make wholesale changes, no doubt about it, at Southampton. There might be a sprinkling of some of the lads who will stay in, but I think he'll almost pick a second team and then revert straight back to his first team for Hull next Wednesday. That's the way it seems to be now. He's got to find a way to get Edwards in the side. We're not going to bring Edwards in and sit him on the bench, and whether that's at the expense of Foster on the left, or whether he's going to maybe play him down the middle, I suppose we'll have to wait and see what Porgy thinks about that. But I do think he'll make wholesale changes, but it's a chance to give Barnesy a run out, isn't it? It's got to give Barnesy a run out, surely, you would think. I never quite got the gist of why we let Jay go and brought Barnesy in. That was a strange one to me. I thought we let the better player of the two go. But again, he has these ideas, and he's going to stick with them. Whatever happens, he's not going to change. I think the side will change completely the weekend and then revert back on Wednesday night.
Yeah, I think we described Barnes as kind of a fairly expensive PR stunt.
Yeah,
perhaps one eye on Jay, perhaps going in January. But Justin, I mean, what Daz was saying there, kind of, we do expect probably 8, 9, 10, maybe even 11 changes, as we saw at Reading. What, if I could kind of give you a magic wand and say you can change 2 players within the side, what 2 are you kind of picking to drop out, and which 2 are you picking to kind of come in their place?
Only 2. I've only got 2 changes.
You've only got 2. Yeah, I mean, come on, we're not making wholesale changes for Hull, are we? We're not,
Well, that's it. I mean, I'm not a massive fan of this playing the reserve team in cup games. I think we should be trying to win the FA Cup. And you just said, we'll probably get beat, but Southampton have only won 2 games all season, and they're on a real downer. And I always think these kind of games are a really good opportunity to test this theory that there's a massive gulf between the Premier League and the Championship, because we're one of the better Championship sides. They're, on paper, the worst Premier League side. It'd be good to see us go head to head with them and see, gauge what our progress is and what sort of level we're actually at. I guess they'll probably make wholesale changes as well, so it's probably going to be more Southampton reserves against Burnley reserves than anything else. But I just wish we'd. I know getting into the Premier League is the number one priority, but I think we've said this before on this podcast. If you enter a competition without the intention of trying to win it, then you're not doing justice to the competition, are you? And I don't think any of these teams do justice to the history and the calibre of the FA Cup. It's the greatest cup competition in the world. To putting your reserve team out in a game against a Premier League side, I think it disappoints me. Let's put it that way.
But you said there, Sean. You said there, Andrew, that Sean wasn't a fan of cup. I don't think many managers these days are a fan of cups.
No. I think it's the kind of wider malaise, isn't it? Really, if you think about it, Burnley v Southampton will probably be a combined 15, 18, possibly 20, 22 changes, won't it?
Unless you're in the middle band of 3 or 4 teams
in
a division where you're not at risk of anything, most managers at the top don't want to sacrifice that because of where they are. Most managers at the bottom protect the players.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. I mean, as for players who I'd bring in, obviously I want to see Edwards. I'd probably bring him in instead of Anthony. Give Anthony a bit of a rest because, I think he's been our most valuable player. And then I'd like to see Shelvey in for Laurent as well, just to see what, how he fits into that team and what sort of influence he has over it. I think those 2 will definitely play. But I think he'll also bring a lot of the others in as well. If we get through this round, we get a step closer, and then we start having to take it a bit more seriously then, don't we? there's no Burnley fan who would choose promotion to the Premier League over winning the FA Cup. I'll tell you that much.
Yeah, and Woody, I mean, one player who I was quite excited by because of his interview, and he's a very, very confident lad. I don't think we've had a podcast since the transfer deadline day. Jadon Bennell from Ajax. I mean, he clearly read the Wikipedia page and when he was kind of going, historic club, 1882 and all that. You're kind of going, right, okay, we get it, mate. You've read it up. But, I mean, he was kind of, is Southampton an opportunity to kind of go, you know what? I think we initially thought he might be off to Dundee like the rest of them. But, there's an announcement video. They've bothered to kind of do proper interviews with him, etc., etc. We didn't get that with Ronaldinho's son. Could that spark that you've been looking for be this kind of, youth team player for Ajax? Because everyone starts somewhere, don't they? If you think about some of the players who've come to the Premier League, having been at Barcelona or Real Madrid B and all that, then gone on to become, really top players. Could the kind of spark you're looking for not be Edwards, but be the kid who they brought in from Ajax, who'd, I think he's been training with us for a bit longer. Kind of, Crabber's kind of alluded to it in his interview in terms of you in here, a bit incognito, etc. Is it, do we see Bennell at Southampton, and is he the bit where you go, right, this is who we need to try and squeeze into this side?
Are we calling him a secret weapon? Is that what you're saying? I
might be calling him a secret weapon. I might be saying that, yeah.
I mean, like you say, we did have him down as going straight to Dundee, bypassing Burnley, do not pass go, didn't we? But that interview, and to all extents and purposes, everything else seems like he's going to be a little bit more first team adjacent. So it may be. I've no idea. But I think if we look back to Reading and when he put Fosterate on the left, I think we'll see something that Parker wants to see. He'll make a tweak or a change in a position and a player that he wants to see, maybe to develop or utilise that in the forthcoming games over the next couple of weeks. So I think, if he does have Bennell in mind, and I think he will play, but I think it is a great opportunity. I do like playing against Premier League sides who have hit the skids, because it is that great matchup, isn't it? It's how good are you? Are you as good as you think you are? And it's Southampton, isn't it? It's like it's a Bournemouth Redux. So let's have him.
Let's have him. Right, let's move on to the transfer window. And not necessarily looking back at Burnley's transfer dealings, but I think it's fair to say that for years and years and years, Burnley fans were sat up on social media waiting for Chris Boden to tweet that he'd been told to stand down. Now, I think I'm fair to say that the person telling Chris to stand down was probably his longtime friend and our guest today, Darren. So I thought what we'd do is we'd just do a bit of we'll come to you first, Chris, to talk about the frustrations of not getting anything out of Daz, even though you know him and you played football with him and you've drunk with him for years and years and years. And then we'll speak to Daz about what his view of transfer deadline day. So, Chris, I think we both know transfer deadline day and the transfer window, the most annoying period to be a sports journalist covering a particular football club, correct?
Yes and no. Yes and no. It can be hugely rewarding if you get hold of a thread, you get into someone's agent, or you get a tip off a fellow journalist or something like that. And whichever way up it happens, and yes, because it's just become this absolute monster machine that's. I mean, I say I feel for so many journalists up and down the land that had these. They all have deadline day blogs now, don't they? That start at 6 a.m. and finish, 11 o'clock. We could go on beyond in the Premier League with deal sheets. You go on further with like European deals, etc., into the day after. In many cases, and often a lot. You've got a youth team player going out on loan to the New Saints or something like that, and you're trying to get this blog. Trying to maintain this blog with absolutely jack shit going on. So it's become this. We're never going to get that day of Berbatov where's Berbatov going to end up? Oh, when someone's just clocked him outside it through the window at Old Trafford, or Dildo Gate at Stoke, and so on and so forth. But it is what it is. And
I think you're going to have to explain what that is, Chris, for those.
Everyone knows Dildo Gate, don't they?
So this was a Sky Sports reporter who, a Stoke fan, thought it was quite hilarious, and it was, to be fair, one of the most watched transfer videos on YouTube. Wiggled. I don't know if it was him doing the wiggling or the dildo doing the wiggling. In the ear of said Sky Sports reporter, a big purple dildo, if I remember rightly.
And it led to, obviously reporters being inside stadiums and training grounds rather than stood on the periphery where all and sundry used to hang out. And it just became this big beast, and it's sort of toned down a little now. But you'd start out, you get your power bank ready because your phone battery is going to go 2 or 3 times, and you're just hammering calls all day long. Agents, like, as I say, colleagues, media men. It's like the bloody CIA sometimes. They just, you're either speaking to you in code or they're unable to give you anything whatsoever because it's so sensitive. And that's it. We've seen down the years. We've seen Grosicki's, monitoring Grosicki's flight, and then the move breaks down. And you're made aware why the move's broken down, and you can't report why the move's broken down because it's so sensitive, etc., etc. There's players failing medicals that some clubs are happy to say, such a player's not signed for us because he's failed a medical, like as we saw with Charlie Austin at Hull. And other clubs are more sensitive. Do you want to stitch the player up, or do you want to just sort of? No, we just couldn't quite get that one over the line and move him, move on to another target. So there's all manner of different nuances, and it's a lot of it's fun, but it took over for me. It became the only thing that people were remotely interested in, not results, not tactics, not anything else, just purely. And as soon as one signing's announced, they don't want to even have a look at that and what it means. It's who's next, next, all the time. And it's become an obsession of sorts. But it's been happening that way since the 80s, really. And Rupert Murdoch saw that it was a driver of paper sales, and we just see an extension of that, really.
Yeah. And Daz, Chris mentioned Grosicki there. I kind of threw that into a little WhatsApp conversation we were having earlier, and you said a very long night, but this was Kamil Grosicki was ended up signing for Hull City, I think, the next window. But you were at Manchester Airport, were you not? And the kind of not quite sat in a Costa coffee, but sat not too far from one of these chain coffee bars, and everything fell down because of concerns about team spirit. Is I think how Tyrone Marshall, our former colleague on the Lancashire Telegraph, described it. But just talk us through that kind of. You as the media officer, kind of, right, we've got this new lad, but we've not got time to get him to Burnley. We've got to meet him at the airport. Just run us through what a transfer deadline day is like for you as somebody who's trying to control Chris Boden.
That's impossible, by the way. It's funny. It's the longest day of your life because, and the weird thing about it is, everybody else knows what you're trying to do. You're the last person in the world. All you're doing is pushing the button and confirming the news because Chris and all the other media know about these moves days before we do. Quite often on transfer deadline day, we'll go in that morning not knowing if there's anything happening or not, or if it's scheduled to happen. And the best part of the day is the Domino's pizza comes about 7 o'clock at night. At least you've got something to eat. But the Grosicki one, that is the longest night of my life. The media team decamped to a hotel, actually. It wasn't a Starbucks. We went to a hotel on the outskirts of Manchester Airport, waiting for this private flight. And then the negotiations were taking in a room away from where we were. The bar bill got a bit of a hammering that night. Soft drinks and Chris, I might add. The bar bill got a bit of a hammering. And it was only late in the evening that we just got told, no, stand down now. And funnily enough, I seem to remember, I'm sure Matt was there at the time. I'm trying to think back now. I lose track of these things.
I think Matt was there. Matt was there, yeah.
It was that Burnley laid on a flight for him. And when it broke down because of the players' demands, I think it was, I'm sure I'm right in saying that. I don't think I'm breaking the conference league. It's probably long gone to water from the bridge now, but we basically told him to start off and he can get his own player back.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I think it was reported that there was some kind of casino debt that he wanted Burnley FC to cover. Now, I don't think we've ever had that confirmed, but just checking. I think it was Dave. I think it was Dave Baldwin.
By the way,
I think it was Dave Baldwin.
We never, Dave was there. We never saw the player, not once that night. We sat in that hotel bar from, it must have been 4 o'clock in the afternoon, maybe even earlier, and it was 11 o'clock at night when we were stood down. And that's deadline day sometimes. You know, you sit there. Sometimes you've got the deals done early in the day, and Matt's really good at this. Burnley, by the way, Matt's got a media background, so he knows what you need. So you'll gather your content and get everything done earlier in the day, but then it's just that long wait then until everything's signed off. I mean, I remember Crouchy came, I think it was a deadline day signing, Crouchy, wasn't he, Chris?
Yeah.
Crouchy came pretty early in the day, and Dave, who was our videographer at the time, had this wacky idea of having a robot sat there. So he did all the preamble video for Crouchy. Remember the robot walking into the building, and all that was done about 10 o'clock in the morning. So when Crouchy came in, all he had to do was literally stand in the dressing room and kick the robot, or kick the ball at the robot, wasn't it? That was it. So all that was in the can from 10, 11 o'clock in the morning, and the signing isn't done till 7, 8 o'clock at night sometimes. They just drag and drag and drag, and that can be a variety of reasons. But the weird thing about, say, being a press officer is you're the last people to let people know what they know already. And inevitably you've got Chris ringing every hour saying, is it done yet? Is it done yet? And you're like, well, it'll be done soon, but you can't go yet. We can't say anything yet. Yeah, it's just a frustrating time all around. And the fact they make it 11 o'clock at night is the biggest pisser of all, because they could do it at 5 o'clock in the evening. But of course, no, they leave it till 11 o'clock at night because it's prime time Sky, isn't it?
Yeah, and I mean, you mentioned the pizza and everything. I think one of the kind of the best bits of Mission to Burnley is, I mean, I think Matt is fantastic, and he's the one who comes across really, really well on Mission to Burnley. But when they're sat there with the cans of Coke and cracking the cans of Coke and the pizza, and they're sat there in the canteen at the Barnfield and things like that. But
and that's
how difficult is it for you as a press officer when, you know, I think, you know, at the time, I remember we mentioned Chris Eagles earlier. I remember kind of tipping, I think, Chris's wife off, Suzanne, who worked at Lancashire Telegraph, about Chris Eagles signing. All the Burnley players, and I think you had gone abroad. And then all of a sudden it fell down, and Coyley got really pissed off because he kind of, you know, he was basically denying that Chris Eagles had been there. But apparently Chris Eagles had an injury, went to South Africa with Man United, then signed just a little bit later. How difficult is it with you? Because you... It almost porch turn gamekeeper, aren't you? Because you'd worked for Lancashire Telegraph, knew Chris and Suzanne well, knew Tyrone well, knew me well. You kind of, how do you balance that relationship?
Yeah, you're having to withhold information sometimes. I mean, you can brief off the record sometimes, but I wasn't always the best at briefing off the record, because I'm a bit like Sean in that respect. Something that's off the record isn't really off the record because you told somebody.
Yeah.
So never really trusted that off the record, and you know, you're conscious that your employer is your paymaster. You've got to look after that first. I think the last one, Chris might correct me on this. I can't remember one since, but we once got one over the line without anybody knowing it. I'm pretty sure that was Kieran Trippier. I think
it was an afternoon, wasn't it? I think. Yeah.
I think he must have been the last signing that we made while I was at the club that we got over the line with nobody having an inkling it was happening. I wasn't Ben Mee, similar time.
It was a lunchtime, I remember, trips, one
You're
summer.
mad, Chris. The fact that you can remember what time of day it is, by the way. Never mind what day it happened.
He just popped out at Butty Shop opposite the Burnley Express on Bull Street, hasn't he? That's the thing.
Exactly.
But it's so rare to get one over the line now without anybody knowing anything about it. And, of course, everything's stage managed now in terms of the announcement videos. You know, back then, of course, it was just an announcement video that was quite simplistic. Now they've turned it to a whole new level, haven't they? And kudos to the media team. Some of the stuff they do is incredible now. But there's a lot of emphasis goes on that now, isn't there? Which is why sometimes probably the deals are late announcing, because you're creating this little masterpiece.
See, I never watched Friends, so the Edwards one went right over my head on every count.
To get Nick to explain it to me.
Never watched Friends. Bit schmaltzy for me.
Yeah, I got it, you see, and I really liked it, I'll be honest. But I mean, Chris, I think you were at the Burnley Express with the likes of, they didn't work for the Burnley Express, but in terms of signings, kind of Bambo, and I think Patterson, when Patterson signed.
Yeah.
You know, we kind
of... I thought you mentioned that, I spoke about it the other week, because it was quite an amusing one, because Mark Patterson was a dyed-in-the-wool Blackburn fan.
Yeah, he's a Darwin lad, isn't he? A great Harwood lad.
Yeah, a Darwin lad, former Rover, of course, who played at North End. And Adrian Heath signed him to all intents and purposes. The summer he went to Everton with Kendall.
Yeah, Kendall.
And we had the photos of him in the Burnley in the yellow away strip. You know, who have signed for Burnley, and he failed a medical and the move collapsed. And it's just like I said, you've got this dyed-in-the-wool Rovers fan wearing a Burnley shirt for no apparent reason, then, aren't you, forever sort of thing. It's just, yeah, there's all sorts of sort of, let's say, players who you're just waiting for the green light on a transfer, and then all of a sudden you're, it's a brush it under the carpet. So that one didn't quite get done, that one.
You end up babysitting this guy as well. I mean, we for the last, Chris talked about the dildo gate and the reports being brought inside stadiums. That happened on my watch a little bit, and that's planned out weeks in advance. And you end up basically babysitting Pete Stevenson for an afternoon and buying pizzas for him and bringing him drinks, because they're sat there just going live every hour with nothing to report. But the machine carries on. The Sky machine wants them on air, doesn't it?
Yeah. So, a few chippies over at Road, was it? What more do they want?
Exactly. Chippy, couldn't they?
Just to end, I think what we'll do whilst we're talking about transfers, let's just go around everyone. What transfer in Burnley history are you watching were you most excited about? So Justin, what signing were you kind of? It could be pre the Murdoch Sky days, of course, pre 1992 when football was invented, but I remember kind of being really excited about Marco Gentili, because I kind of like, his uncle was Claudio, and it was before my time, but you read it and we were third tier at that point, and this guy's come from, the Dutch top division. I think he played in that game at Hartlepool, didn't he, where we got beat in the cup, and that were about it. But what was the kind of, perhaps as a kid or a youngster or even as an adult, what signing were you most excited about as a Burnley fan?
I like Gentili. I used to like Raul Bambo as well. I thought he was going to be a world beater.
Bambo was going to be
purely on his name. But I have to say, I mean, I know Stan pulled off a few transfer coups, but when Ian Wright signed, that was really exciting to me, because I thought it's difficult to imagine now, but we were kind of quite starved of sort of like that kind of quality. Yeah. I mean, at that time. Gaza as well. I mean, when he came, that was amazing. But I mean, obviously, I don't think he was quite at his peak when he played.
I think he was pissed for most of it, weren't he? Even I think in his autobiography, thinks he plays for Barnsley, doesn't he?
Yeah, but in my mind, Gaza still played for Burnley, and that's still a coup on my book. But I think when Ian Wright came, that was amazing. It was incredible. I mean, I know he obviously was at the tail end of his career, and he was well past the peak of his powers, but to be able to see that kind of class at Turf Moor, and in moments he showed flashes of what he'd been capable of in the past, and it was a different level to what we'd seen, what I'd seen, since watching the Clarets. But yeah, that's the one that sticks out in my mind.
Yeah, I was lucky enough to be at that press conference. We had a snow day at school, and I knew Eduardo, who was kind of in Daz's position. I think Danny Rubin might have been in your position, but yeah, I got to go to that press conference as a kid, like 15-year-old kid, and met Ian Wright, which is fantastic. But I agree. I think Wrighty was a good one. Chris, what about you? What kind of, and do you get less excited because you're working on that side of things, or is there still a sign in which you go, you might be one you covered, it might be one before you joined the Burnley Express, that you kind of go, that got me off my seat, metaphorically?
Yeah. Anyone knows about me and my favourite players, etc. Steve Davis. I was absolutely devastated when he left first, to go to Luton of all places, and then we got wind. It was just one of those transfers that you thought Burnley didn't have a pot to piss him, and you sell Davis for 750 grand tribunal. He'd been gone for 3.5 years, and how on earth have we got the bloody money to pay his value? And obviously Barry Kilby was on the precipice of sort of becoming chairman, taking over, and it just absolute thrill, to turn up in a press conference knowing that your favourite Burnley player's coming home, and the success he he had with the club in many, I think it's like 4 promotions he won as player and coach, and just a lovely fella to go with it as well. But that one, I was so pleased with that. And there's bigger and better players and what have you. Not to do Steve down, but that was really like, I was so pleased. No.
Yeah, I agree. One of my favourite players, and like you said, a brilliant bloke to boot as well. Perhaps we'll get him on the poddy as well and have a bit of a chat with him, because I know the kind of way he left the second time with Coyley and went to Bolton. I know that kind of probably rankles him a little bit because of perhaps promised some kind of job and then not really given one. Woody, what about you? I mean, I presume Phil Kavanagh's going to be the one which you can talk about now.
Besides Phil Kavanagh and Assignon, Steve Harper, obviously. No, I think Marlon Beresford, for similar reasons to Chris, because we'd had that season going up, 5 keepers. Beresford felt far too good. We didn't have a pot to piss in. We had a bucket with an hole in it that we jangled around constantly for a couple of seasons. And the fact that he actually decided to come of his own volition rather than just on loan, felt like, I don't know, just felt like a bit of a statement. It felt like he'd turned a corner, as it were. So, and he was a hell of a keeper to boot.
Definitely. And then I think it's only fair that we give our final word to our special guest, Daz. Go on, Daz. Maybe one you've dealt with, or one kind of before your kind of press officer stroke journalist days. Who's your kind of favourite Burnley signing?
I've had some weird ones down the time. The weirdest one I ever had was when Diego Penny signed. Remember Diego came?
Yeah.
And I was sent to the airport to pick him up. I don't know why this happened, but I ended up bringing him back in a car. The poor lad didn't speak a word of English. My Peruvian's not the best. And it was just this silent journey all the way back to Burnley. And of course, the poor lad lasted next to no time at all. Did he? I'm with Justin that Wrighty was earth-shattering for me at the time. I'll never forget that night. I was cooking up a stir-fry at the time. And I think that's one that came out of nowhere as well,
Yeah.
And I was freelancing at the time. I'd left the Telegraph, I was freelancing. And I got a call off Sky Sports, because I was doing a bit of reporting for them, and said, can you get to this pub in Darwin? Because Stan Turnan's there, and you can get him on Wrighty. So I had to hoof it over to this pub I don't even know what the pub's called, middle of nowhere on the moors over Darwin. And Stan was in there having his tea. So I went in to speak to Stan about it, and he said, when I've finished, lad. And I had to stand outside while he finished his tea before he came out and told us about Wrighty signing. Yeah. But that was just incredible, wasn't it? Ian Wright playing for Burnley.
Yeah. I'm on in Edgerton, that.
I can't think of the name of the pub, Chris. It's on the moors.
That's Stan about it, because it was the Monday. I used to ring Stan every Monday, and I'd said, "Go on, there's like whispers about Wrighty," and he usually just say to all, I don't talk about transfer speculation, but on this occasion, I think he said it's complete fucking bollocks.
I think David Johnson, weren't it? Dave Johnson transfer, but yeah.
Michael Stewart.
He was a legend, Stan. He was a legend.
What a guy.
Wrighty for me was just incredible. I mean, Gazza, maybe less so, because we knew kind of state Gazza was in when he came, but it moved mountains different. Well, when Wrighty came, it just his earth-shattering for Burnley, wasn't it? Yeah. People still don't know. I still speak to people, in my job now. They don't know Ian Wright played for Burnley. They can't remember that.
Yeah. It's weird, isn't it? Yeah.
20 games, did he play 18 games, Chris? Something like that? Mostly on the bench?
Something like that. 4 starts, I think, yeah.
Came off the bench and scored at Gillingham, didn't he? I remember listening to that on Radio Lancashire, cutting out just as the cross was coming in, which it kind of came back, and he'd scored that late winner at Gillingham, and you just kind of went, you know what, this is us going up here, and this is that season.
But
I worked so good pulling the ISDN line out like he used to do on Clarets play, right?
It could well have been Birdie, actually, yeah.
Well, so that was just very quickly. I mean, there's been a bit of speculation about Wrighty not being happy at Burnley, blah blah blah. He'd been, left on the bench before that game to Gillingham, and again, I'd rung Stan, and he was on the coach on the way down, and it was like I said, there's a bit of a story about Wrighty,
You're a brave man ringing him up, by the way, to ask him that.
Oh, well, you just did back then. You just got on with it, and if you got a bit of stick, you got a bit of stick. But he said that you want to speak to him yourself? And he literally like put the phone to, so you just like, Welly and he just, absolute nonsense, like, and he loved it. He absolutely loved it. So, and he, just a top man, right? Well, see, we come back for the 125th dinner.
He still talks nicely about the club now, doesn't he?
He was brilliant. He gave us sort of 10, 15 minutes, just a bit of a chat that night, and just top class.
Yeah, what a guy as well. I mean, I think he's a national treasure. I absolutely love Wright.
Yeah, absolutely.
What an absolute incredible human being. But lived up all sight with Mitchell Thomas as well, which I think they had to keep the curtains closed for the whole of the time they were there, because their garden was just full of kind of all sight kids trying to get a glimpse of Wright and Mitchell Thomas. But well, there we are. What a way to end. So, Daz, listen, thank you so much for jumping on. I know we've kind of had some contract negotiations because you're now at Everton, and we were trying to make sure we could get clearance, international clearance for you to come on the podcast, and we've wanted you on a while. Let's not leave it so long next time before we get you back on. So thank you very much, mate. Really appreciate it.
Mate. Let's hope we get Burnley down at the new stadium next year, because that'll be something.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, perhaps next time we come on, we'll talk a little bit about the new stadium at Everton, because I know you've been quite instrumental with some of the PR stuff around that. But listen, we'll be back on Monday with the next episode. Hopefully a nice positive debrief from the Southampton Cup game. Don't forget, we have now got a Substack, so we are pumping out some newsletters from the bln.substack.com. If you want to subscribe to that, we're kind of building up towards the season's end, ready for a big kind of hard launch in the summer for next season. So, but yeah, enjoy your weekend. Enjoy the Burnley versus Southampton game, Southampton versus Burnley, wherever you're watching it. If you are travelling down South Coast, safe journey. Until we speak to you again, up the Clarets.
How many times do I have to tell you? Stop moaning!
Not going anywhere. I've never been happier. Only to wake up in a whole different world.